On this episode of Nerdy Romantics Podcast, we will continue our discussion of Wonder Man, the Marvel TV series. We talk about the comic book history of the Wonder Man character, the genius that is Ben Kingsley. We talk about the many cameos, why we think this is a great buddy comedy, and we cap it off with a star rating. As always, this will contain spoilers, so spoiler alert. If you've watched Wonder Man, stay tuned for a fun and funny good time. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. So, now that we kind of already talked about the actors and all that kind of stuff, I probably should talk about the comic stuff because this is probably where Perry would talk about comic stuff.
Okay.
So let me talk about comic stuff. So for those who are wondering about Wonder Man in the comics, because we are not comic book readers, but you might be, Perry has given me a little bit of this because, of course, I asked him, I said, is Wonder Man in both the X-Men and the Avengers comics? And that's because I was reading some stuff on Threads that was not right. So he helped me out with this. So Wonder Man had a pretty interesting journey in the comics. Simon, who's Wonder Man, was actually similar to Tony Stark, also the son of a rich industrialist, and he inherited his father's company. But competition with Stark led to falling profits, and under the advice from his brother Eric, who we see in the show, Simon embezzles funds from his company. He was caught in prison and he blamed Stark. He accepted an offer from Baron Zemo. So Baron Zemo, as we know, was in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in that Captain America kind of line. In this case, the father of the Zemo that we see in the MCU, the Baron
Okay.
Zemo that we
Okay.
see, to undergo an experiment using ionic radiation to give him superpowers. So I did know that he didn't get, like, we don't know from the show, we don't really necessarily know where he got his superpowers from. We just know he had them. So in the comics, different. He got them in experiment. Zemo used Wonder Man to infiltrate the Avengers so his masters of evil could then destroy them. Wonder Man betrayed Zemo and saved the Avengers, but apparently died. But Hank Pym, as we know,
Ant-Man.
yeah, the original Ant-Man, recorded Simon's brain patterns in the hopes that they could someday revive him. His brother Eric then later became a villain called the Grim Reaper, blaming the Avengers for his brother's death. Interesting. Simon's brain patterns were stolen by Ultron, and we know who Ultron is from the Avengers, the second Avengers movie, and used to program the Vision, who we also know.
Mm-hmm.
Later, he ended up being resurrected. Zemo's experiment transformed Simon into a being of ionic energy, which basically means he can't really die. Interesting. Interesting because he also played in the DC comics a being that couldn't die. Did we know that?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Interesting. Don't know what's going on with this actor here. Anyway, we're going to continue. He then developed an interest in acting and ended up being pretty successful. He died again later, only to be resurrected by the Scarlet Witch. And he would eventually end up in a relationship with Wanda after she and the Vision had split up. One big story point is that the Vision's interest in Wanda may have actually been based on Simon's brain patterns. Oh, that's interesting to know.
Okay.
So you've got an interesting little family dynamic with Hank Pym creating Ultron, who then created Vision, and then Vision was based on Simon's brain waves and all this other stuff he talks about. So that he's getting a little meta here.
That's
Love you,
really
Perry,
a
but
whole,
he's
yeah.
getting a little
Yeah, that was
meta.
a lot.
Uh,
I know.
And I don't know
but
that it helps with the series.
he's saying here that we also don't know, like we were saying just now, we also don't know how Simon got his powers here. Perry thought we might see a scene where he gets them as a kid, but that doesn't seem to happen because he seemed to
No.
already have had them as a kid.
Yeah, they don't mention that at all. They just mention
Yeah.
how, what was it, a
A
fire or something
fire.
There
that
was
It
a
was
was the
happening,
fire.
and
fire.
he
Yeah.
wasn't harmed, or
And when right, and then when he did what he did at the birthday party, they were like, "Oh my gosh," but they weren't shocked. They were like,
Yeah,
"Oh
so
Mm-hmm.
my
he had to
gosh, he
show.
did it
Yeah, he was
again."
showing
Yep.
powers before, or
Yep.
at
Yeah.
least his family.
So he
Side note, I
says,
thought him bringing Ben Kingsley to that how welcome they made him feel made the guilt just
"Right?
pile on. I
Right.
felt
I
guilt.
think.
I felt guilty. That
Yes,
wasn't even me. I
Mm-hmm.
was like,
Yeah, I think that
right."
was the turning point actually when they had that conversation in the like on the cul-de-sac, like when they were looking over the city
mhm.
after the party. I think that was a key part of the turning point where he started to act differently and to invest differently in him. I
Mhm.
think that was it. And I think
Yeah,
when once he left the party.
His mom said that
I'm glad
was
he
a
has
that
kid.
you,
was the turning point.
Yeah, I was
girl.
like, oh,
But yeah, when his mom said,
Yeah,
"Oh
when she said, "But I'm glad he
friend.
has a friend. I'm glad he has you." I
That's
was like,
your first
"Oh
friend. I was like,
no,
yeah, okay.
and we got to talk about her because
Yeah.
yeah,
oh gosh," but yes, we're going to talk about Trevor Slattery and everything. But yeah, let's talk about Simon's family. Since we saw all this stuff we heard what Perry said about the comics, so we got that. But let's actually talk about this family dynamic.
Well, after what he said about what the real dynamic was, I like the one on, on the show a lot
I
better.
right.
know.
Because
I
his
I
brother
mean,
just,
was
gosh.
a upstanding citizen and didn't and was not a cheat at this point.
yeah.
And
And I mean, and you can understand his kind of up to a point, his frustration. I'm
hmm
Yeah.
supporting your dreams, and I'm giving, but I'm hey, here's a job, so I don't have to support you. I can actually pay you for what you're doing for me versus
right,
me giving you money.
and
And
you
I
think it's
do
too
see,
good, but
yeah,
also
but also,
what are you
yeah,
doing?
what are you doing? You just bought Ma a gift. I bought Ma a gift. You know?
hmm
Yeah.
And I mean, I understood that. Granted, he shouldn't have said anything like that, but at the same time, I could see his a little bit of resentment that
Yeah.
whole the prodigal son has returned, but I've been here all this time and you're doing this for him.
hmm
And I can see up to a point jealousy from the brother for the
Yes.
mom's doing all this. And it's like he's just done this. I've got a whole business. And
Hmm.
but at the same time, he needed it. The mother knows that he needed it,
hmm
that he needed the support, and then he had that dream and that I mean, I like to see that dynamic, just because, it's true. Like, you have siblings who are like that and that, or just in general, like, no matter how old you are, at some point, it's like, I remember my brother first started learning how to crawl, and I was like, what's so what? He was learning how to crawl. I was a little kid. I remember that clearly. And as an adult, I was like, dude, I was jealous. He just straight out over this baby. Learn how to crawl. I'm here walking. What are you talking about?
Oh my
But
gosh.
it's just that. But
Yeah.
from that experience, I remember that clearly as an adult now. I remember me to be so jealous. They all oohing and on over this kid doing a crawl. I can kind of see that, but at the same
hmm
time, you can tell he loves his brother because he continued to support his brother. And you see also at the end how proud he is of his brother when you see, once they're there. And also just that
hmm
mother support of that how much she loves
Yeah.
both of her sons, but they also needed something different from her
hmm
because of who they are,
Yep.
because of how they are.
Yeah.
And like I said, when she said Big Kingsley about him and his, having a friend, I was like, oh my God. I
Oh, that
I
just
took me down. I was like,
know.
oh, and I think it took
yeah.
him down too,
Too.
because
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
and
I think that,
he knew he was a false friend at that
yeah,
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Exactly. And I think that was kind of a little bit of the start.
Yep.
But I'm with you, Marcy. I think when they were on that hill, that was the turning point for
Mm-hmm.
Ben. He was like,
Yep.
yeah,
Because I
I
think it
yeah.
also reinforced. I think it was what made him question the validity and the reality of what they were telling him about who Simon was. And then you hear his mom's explanation of his childhood and his youth. And I think that's a moment when he was really like, he's not who they say he is. And I think
Mhm.
you're right, Stacey. Then he had that conviction of heart of, and I'm not who I say I am either. And I think, yeah,
Mhm.
by the time they got to that conversation and that heart to heart, I think that's when he started deciding he was gonna do different. But okay, I have something to say, but go ahead, finish.
I was wondering, like, maybe he didn't have friends. Like, how early did his powers develop? Because maybe he's from people or from of his powers.
Well, didn't
I
they
think it was
say
he was
that
a
the
little
fire
kid. He,
he was 9
he
when
was
the
like 8 or
fire
9.
happened?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was at least at that point.
Yep. He was little. Because remember, he didn't want to go to
Yeah.
school that day when his dad dropped him
Then what
off?
did it say exact age? That's when they noticed. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think yeah. What I wanted to say is because Marcy was talking about Trevor and about his change, I wanted to ask, what did y'all think about? Now, there's some well, not comic book, sorry, it's some MCU stuff that has to do with Trevor and his timeline. But what did y'all think about? I mean, obviously, Sir Ben Kingsley. Come on,
Right.
yes. But what do we think about Trevor? What do we think about that whole thing going on? Him and his
So
drug alcoholic past.
So I think I think that really wanted to bring up was that we're talking a lot about the deep stuff, but we have not talked about the fact that there are some real like buddy cop hilarious moments
Yes.
between them in all of these
Yes.
shenanigans,
Yeah.
whether what it reminded me of a couple of times is like when Ozzy Osbourne, when they had the reality show, when he would just throw something out there and you'd be like, did he just say that? But it was his reality.
Yeah.
So like Ozzy's perception of biting the head off the bird was very different than everybody else. He just brings it up in conversation because in his mind, it's not the thing that it is for everybody else. So sometimes Ben Kingsley would just bring up random stuff in conversation, mostly about drug use and shenanigans. But it was because you realize that's really just what his reality at the time really was. And so it's just funny to see that. Also, when they're trying to do the getaway, because I'm not gonna lie to you, that scene with the dude on the bike and the GoPro and the chamoy and the
Yes.
candy shop, that whole
Yes.
thing was
That whole
hilarious.
thing is awesome.
And I laughed from the beginning to the end of that whole episode. It was great. But when he was driving,
Yes.
and he said, "Oh, I haven't done this in years." Like stuff like that. It was funny. Like I think that as much as we talk about the depth, I think that the other thing
Mm-hmm.
that Marvel does well is this all interweaved into
Yeah.
funny. Like it was
Yeah.
it. I laughed. There were times when you had to laugh when they were talking about like trying to make him the spokesperson for the Chamoy, and they were coming up with
Yeah.
names on the fly. Like the whole scene
Right.
was just hilarious, and I
Yeah.
think that it's
And
just
he's like, yes, I think we need to be on his side now.
right. Yeah, I think we're on the wrong side of right
We're
here.
on the
And
wrong
so
side.
he's like, no, I think we need to sit down and listen. Like we need to listen to the story. And Simon's like, yo, we gotta go. We gotta get the thing. And so as he's doing that, he's also like trying to figure out how to get the footage and all that. Like I think
Yeah.
that it was just it reminded me of old school like when Stallone and Kurt Russell were doing like Bird on a Wire. Like very much buddy kind of comedy.
Yes.
And I thought that they both played that very well, in addition to playing straight and
Yeah.
serious where they had to. And I
Yeah.
almost like I couldn't tell if Ben Kingsley knew, like he seemed surprised when they got the call back too. Like I can't tell I couldn't tell
Yes.
if that was
He
part of
was
the
acting,
machine.
acting,
Right.
acting.
I
Like he
couldn't
was real
tell.
meta in it, and he was
I couldn't tell
good.
if he knew for sure or not because he seemed surprised, but genuinely surprised, not the fake surprise. But I
Yeah.
just like it got he was
Like
layered
what?
in his
Yeah.
deliveries, but his timing, their timing together was
Amazing.
epic. That whole scene, everybody in that scene had some of the best comic timing I have ever seen because I hee and ha
Yeah.
and chuckled because I thought that the places where there was levity and the places where they got to be lighter, I think were perfectly placed,
Mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed them. And so I don't want people to listen to this and hear us talking about the depth and the layers and not remember that there's a comic layer
Yeah.
that you will enjoy that runs throughout most of the episodes. Probably not as much in the Doorman, but even that was had some funny parts. But
Yeah, that was still funny
it was
too.
still kind of funny.
Hey, Josh Gad,
Yeah, that's
come
some
on,
Forest
yeah.
Park.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't
and
want people to think it's
just
all serious.
because it is kind of still like a not a buddy move, but a kind of a buddy series,
Mm-hmm.
like what the
Yes.
Falcon and then the Winter Soldier and Falcon. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you
Yeah,
had
Falcon and
that
Winter
in it
Soldier,
with
yes.
Soldier, so you had that there in this show as well. So I mean, we did talk
Mm-hmm.
about all the serious stuff, but there is it is not a serious
Mm-hmm.
drama. I mean, it might be
Right.
more like a dramedy if
Right.
anything, but because it had a lot of comedy in it when they were together. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
so I mean those I don't think anyone should think of it as going to be a serious drama throughout the whole thing. It is funny,
It is
and I
funny.
do think they those two characters together were just great.
Yes. Very
They
much so. I mean, this predates me a little bit, but I remember reruns of The Odd Couple.
Yeah.
And and they have a little bit of that going on. They're on
Mm-hmm.
their own thing, but they had a little bit of that going on in places. They just vibe off of each other really
mhm.
well.
They did.
I
The
mean
the
that's when you
vibe
have you
is
see the
really well.
friendship really there in it,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
why would he at the end risk all he did for how they what they risky for each
Each
other
other.
at the
Exactly.
end.
Because
Mhm.
you could feel it was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, because I don't want to forget her,
Hmm.
the agent. She was
Yes.
she was
Honey, yeah.
hilarious.
But mhm.
She was
Totally
hilarious, and I was
hilarious.
glad to see her in all that she represented. But she was hilarious. She clearly knew her initial client Simon. The fact that she ended up basically being both their agents at the end, it was great. But I loved her, and I think she was funny too. And her sarcasm and the way that they put her in places to lighten things up, I think, but
Mm.
also made her serious at her job. Like
Right.
Mhm.
I loved her in that space, and I think it added to the. I mean, this cast was just
Very good.
everybody played whatever they were supposed to play to the hilt. Like nobody came and was like, I don't know if it's just gonna be a season two, so I'm not gonna give my best. Everybody played that like it had
They
like
played like he
the
was doing the first
they
episode.
exactly they played like they came
Yes.
to play.
Yeah.
And I
They
told my
were very
mom
much method acting in this.
I told my
They
mom,
were
I
playing
said,
it.
yeah, it was Abishola's aunt play his
Hmm.
mom. And the fact that it
Yes.
took me probably two, maybe three episodes before I could place her because she
Yeah.
was so good
She's not
that
playing the
I didn't see
same.
her as
Yes.
Abishola's aunt. And I really
Yes.
had to think back and be like, that is where I know her from. And it was one time when she turned and smiled, and I recognized her face in that moment. It was in the kitchen when
Mm.
she turned and smiled at Ben Kingsley and said, "I'm glad that he has you." That was the first time that I realized that it was her, that I knew her from somewhere. And then I think in like a episode or two later is when I was like, "Oh, okay, cool, that's who that is." But everybody, I mean, it was chock full of really talented actors delivering everything that they were supposed to deliver.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. They definitely were. And I think it's interesting because Simon Abdul Mateen, he has played in three different superhero things, but I didn't think about any of those things while I was watching this.
Nope.
I was like, this guy is Simon and Wonder Man, and he is in it for that.
Hmm.
You
And
know,
he bodied it. And I mean, I wanted to smack him. I wanted to root for him. I was cheering for him when it came to it. Like I wanted to choke Ben Kingsley, but I was rooting for him
yeah,
when they were at the mansion. Like that was just, I mean, this every episode was like,
great.
come
Yes.
on,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, all wonderful performances. The episodes were just on point. And like we kind of said in the beginning, we kind of forgot this was a superhero thing, which I love when Marvel does that. And two, I think because this is a superhero thing, they can do some of the social things that they do and get away with it. That is the magic of sci-fi and superhero stuff, y'all. You know, some people are watching it and they're thinking one thing, and others of us who are educated know what's going on. But anyway, to move on from that point, even though we're not thinking superhero thing, what we might have been at first, but as we're watching, we're not thinking superhero thing. One thing that was going through my mind was Trevor Slattery, because he's been on several things. And for those of us who are superhero, I'm at least following the MCU. This is not necessarily for comic books, this is more so for MCU. You probably have seen Sir Ben Kingsley playing some other stuff. So here's a little background on that. So I asked Perry. So I think Trevor Slattery's timeline in the MCU is correct, but I just wanted to confirm. Was he in Captain America, the Winter Soldier? The MCU bite in the middle where he was arrested for being the Mandarin, and then he got out when the 10 rings came after him, and then Shang-Chi, and then here. So that was my thought on the timeline, but he clarified it for me. So the 10 rings were the terrorist group that Stain hired to kill Star Iron Man. In Iron Man 3, that's when Trevor first appeared. See, I thought it was Captain America, but it's Iron Man 3. Aldrich Killian had co opted the 10 rings name to gin up the threat of terrorism in order to get increased funding for his AIM project. And then he hired Trevor to play the Mandarin as this over the top terrorist leader, which is that's all of the backstory stuff that we see here. Trevor was arrested at the end of the film and sent to prison. In the All Hail the King short film, that's the MCU Bites thing that I'm talking about. I couldn't remember the name of it. For those who have Disney Plus, there on the Marvel page, there are little bites in the middle of the movies, especially in the Infinity Saga. There are little multi bites in the middle that are supposed to connect the movies and the shows all together. If you're looking at the Disney Plus Marvel page, there is a section there where you can watch all of these things together. Like if you wanted to actually sit for like 2 weeks of your life and watch all these one at a time. But there are little snippets, shorts that are in the middle of some of these movies, especially in the Infinity Saga, that kind of explains some stuff. In the multiverse, it's a lot of the one season shows like Ironheart, Wonder Man, Echo, Moon Knight, all those shows. But in the Infinity Saga, there's little snippets. So this one was a little snippet called All Hail the King short film. Trevor was interviewed by a documentary filmmaker. For those who are just listening, I put that in quotes, or reporter. During the interview, the interviewer tells Trevor that there is a real Mandarin, and that real Mandarin is part of the 10 rings. And I am part of the 10 rings. That's why I put that in quotes. And so he breaks Trevor out of prison and tells him that the real Mandarin is angry that Trevor stole his name. And then in Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings movie in the multiverse, that's when we find out that the real Mandarin is Shang-Chi's father. And they broke Trevor out with the intent to kill Trevor. But he proved to be entertaining enough, and they kept him as a prisoner for entertainment. And so now we have Wonder Man where he comes back. So that's
Gotcha.
kind of Trevor Slattery. So if you've seen Sir Ben Kingsley in the MCU, you've seen him in somewhere in that timeline. So that's where he is in that timeline. But what I wanted to talk about before we end this with a star rating is some cameos. I'm not going to say Easter eggs. I'm really going to just say cameos. And some funny cameos for me were, and now I can't remember anybody's name. Josh Gad was, to me, hands down. Josh Gad playing Josh Gad. Wow. Hilarious.
He was.
Just hilarious. And
me thinking he was actually missing because of that cameo.
Well, even more hilarious. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And when Simon and Trevor go to try to find a place to film this, Joe Pantoliano, and they go to Joe Pantoliano's house.
Yeah, and they talk about his books, like his. They talked about his movies. Like no one wants to see Baby's Day Out. I mean,
I was like, oh my gosh, they are making actual jokes about this actual man's movie.
To the actual man.
To the actual man, right? Then he makes a little joke too. He's like, and then when they get older, they knight him or something. Like if I was in England, I'd be a knight by this point. And then they pan the camera over to
Big.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. It's so hilarious. But I kind of knew this was going to happen because at the very start, like where Simon gets fired, they're actually filming American Horror Story. And the actress that he's playing against is actually Ashley Greene, who's playing Ashley Greene from the Twilight movies. And I'm like, this is wow. Yep. So they really are getting meta. And that's also kind of what made me think a little bit about Entourage, because they did a little bit of that stuff too. They had, at one point with Entourage, as it was getting towards the end, people were just coming on just to do a cameo on that show.
Yep.
You know?
I never watched it. So.
They just had people to come on just to care. I didn't even watch this in real time because I didn't have HBO then when it was going on in real time. But I just went back to watch it on HBO. Oh, it's HBO Max now. It's changed names so much. Oh my gosh. I forgot. This was like one of these shows back in the day when it was running. You know,
it was.
I was like, this is wild. And people were just coming on the show just to show their face. They weren't really even doing anything, really.
They were really just being themselves, but on Entourage. Yeah.
Right. It's like, this is wild. But this is one of the cool things about this particular show, that they really went meta with this. And that's another part of the funny about it. So there's the Marvel funny, which Ben Kingsley, to me, is doing the most with this. With his straight face, sarcastic funny. I'm going to say something over the top, but it's just going to sound like everyday stuff, just like Marcy was saying. I was like, you're really doing it here. But then they also have little layer of actors being actors, and then stereotypes of actors being actors and stuff like that. And that's hilarious to me, y'all. So I'm wondering if I missed any of the cameos. And what did y'all think about them, or did we not think about any?
I mean, I thought they were fun to see those people. I think for me, the meta-est moment I had was that I felt like when they were at the mansion, I was watching an episode of The Bachelorette. Like, I felt like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was a cross between like The Bachelorette and something that MTV would have had. Like there was
Yeah.
all this
Yeah.
weird, it felt like this odd competition show. That's kind of I think that was the most of me is I felt like everybody was trying to get a rose or win some sort of reality
Yeah.
competition, and everybody was in the different rooms and they were like trying. I was like, oh, this is so weird. But that's what it gave me the vibe of, and that to me was like the meta thing was like, oh my gosh, this is
It's
crazy.
utmost. It's
Yeah,
utmost.
this is
It really
the
is. It
most.
really was. It was like trying to be a show, but it was really an audition, and it was yes.
Yeah.
And then even I guess that's his assistant. She was just so like deadpan. And then when he was talking about the shoes, is she wearing shoes? She was wearing.
Right.
She's like,
Oh my.
wait here. And gosh, are you crazy? You know, I mean, just
It was so random.
everything was so like over the top right
Yep.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very Hollywood and very meta right
Mhm.
there. Marcy, you're totally right about that. That mansion scene was, oh my goodness. It was crazy. Oh gosh. But then, it just brings to mind like this. And when somebody was saying on Threads, I think, that the way they put this out, they kind of had to sandwich this was a lot about scheduling because like right after this was put out, there was either the Super Bowl or the Olympics. I think the Super Bowl was right after it, and then the Olympics was right after that or something like that. And so they were trying to sandwich this kind of in, and then after that, it was going to be all the superhero stuff all over the place. And so it was a timing thing because I think they were supposed to put out not not go out all at one time like it did. But to be honest, I'm glad it went out all at one time because I mean, did y'all just sit and watch this all at one time?
I did. I ended up binging it. Yep. And I
I mean,
found it a nice palate cleanser between Bridgerton, the two Bridgerton seasons. Like I felt like it was a nice
yes,
palate cleanser. So I ended up
yes,
watching it all at once because to your point, once I got over the hump, like once I got to episode 2, after that I couldn't stop. And so I just
yeah,
and it was because I think the other thing is I think that people don't realize that the runtime for this one, although there are several episodes, I think it's really only 2 hours and 45 minutes or 2 hours and 55 minutes.
yeah,
Like it's
because
not
they're
even a
not
whole
full
it's
hour
mhm.
episodes. I think they're like half hour. Are they half hour
So some
episodes
of
or
so the
23 something minutes?
So the longest one is 35 minutes, and the shortest one, the Doorman Clause, is 23.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they
Which,
have
if it had commercials, which mine does, y'all, I got the cheap one. It's a half hour episode. Mm. Yeah. But
right.
yeah,
So
you're right. It's
quick
not
afternoon.
those long, it's not a long drawn out series. It's a quick series. You're right. It does act as a palate cleanser in a sense. And if you have been watching the multiverse, which not a lot of people have, to stipulate to that, but if you have been watching some of the shows of the multiverse, this is one of the lighter ones.
Also, you don't
It's
have to
not,
know the multiverse to get into this one.
you don't have
Right.
to know
Really,
anything about the multiverse
Mm-hmm.
to get into this.
Yep.
Now,
it's
there's
helpful
some
on
back
some of the things for the
right there
backstory though of
exactly
why
for
they doing this to the
backstory, but
superheroes.
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
you
it's
really
not
don't even
overly
have to know that.
superhero-y.
Hmm.
So
Right.
I think honestly that this is a good one if you're a super fan trying to watch something with someone who's not. This is a good one because it does have all those other components. It's got dramedy, it's got the buddy kind of thing, and it's not overly superhero-y to the point where, to your point, you don't have to know their backstory to
No.
be anywhere. The superpowers are there, but they're not the forefront, and they're not the why for this one in the same way that they are in some of the other ones. So I do think it's a good one for people who are trying to find something to watch with people who don't share the same enthusiasm for the universe
Yeah.
or the multiverse, because it's an entry kind of thing. It's one that most people can appreciate without having to know too much. And it's shorter than some of the actual Marvel films, and you'll be through it the whole series. So I
Right.
think in that regard, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's a good rainy afternoon. Yep.
So on that note, Marcy, well, what are you going to give it as a star rating? So I will remind everybody what the star ratings are. We base this on the Goodreads star rating. 1, we did not like it. 2 stars, it was okay. 3 stars, we liked it. 4 stars, we really liked it. And 5 stars, it was amazing. And unlike Goodreads, we will rate in between that if you want. So, Marcy, given what you've just said, what is your star rating?
I'm gonna be honest. When I first started, I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna finish. But honestly, I give it 4.5 stars because it was a good time. It was well acted. It was well written. Once I understood the pace was great. It did have some of my favorite actors in it. Yeah, I'm giving it 4.5 stars. I think people should watch this one, and I hate that it's not getting the attention that it should. So I say 4.5 stars. Put it on your rainy day list. Watch a non-super fan and get 2 more eyeballs on it. It's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Stacy, what about you? What's your star rating for this one?
My star rating will be a 4 for it. Like I told Marcy, like at the beginning, I wasn't sure about it and I had to kind of watch it. Or not rewatch the whole thing, rewatch that first episode to keep myself kind of going. But once I got out of that lens of a superhero movie, I really enjoyed it. The only reason I'm not going to give it any higher than that is the rewatch value of certain things. If I'm going to much more likely rewatch it, because I have gone back on certain things like, I've watched like episodes, or I watched the whole season of that with Marcy again the second time versus this. I'm not sure if I would necessarily pick up on my own to watch it again fully, but I did enjoy it enough to be like, oh, enough to say I liked it. I really liked it, enjoyed it. So not quite a 5, just for the fact that it did start off a little bit slow for me to get into it, but once I got into it, oh, it was wonderful. So a 4.
All right, cool. 4 stars. All right. Perry doesn't seem like he gave it a star rating, but I will let everybody know. I asked him, what did you think of the series? He said, I loved it. It obviously is very different from what I expect of Wonder Man because of the comics. But I thought Abdul Mateen and Kingsley were excellent. They had incredible chemistry together, and the show had me completely riveted. If I'd had the time, I likely would have binged the whole thing in one night. A reminder, he has 2 small children. So that may be why he didn't. As much as I love the big superhero spectacles, I think this is also really cool that we can have smaller projects like this that show what it's like to live in a superhero world. So, yeah, agree with that. But more so, I agree with what you, Marcy, and Stacy are saying about in the beginning, it took me a moment. I will say this though, Marcy, because you're not a trailer person, it does not show anything about him being a superhero in the trailer. In the trailer, it's about him trying to be an actor
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get it together as an actor and those kinds of things. So if you watch the trailer, you're probably going to get that. You're probably not going to get the superhero thing, but because we know it's Marvel and we know it has something to do with superhero things or powers or something of that nature, then that's where our mind is going. And of course, with me, that's where my mind was going a little bit. But in general, that very first episode was hard to watch, especially with him getting fired. But like I said, where I thought I was going to hang it up before, by episode 3, I said, no, I'm going to sit and finish watching this. And I did. I did sit, I binge watched it and I loved it. And I'm going to give it a 4.5 stars as well. And the only reason why I'm not giving it a 5 stars is because of how I was feeling in the beginning. But we're supposed to feel that way. I now know. I get that. Okay. So, y'all out there that's listening and watching, I get it. We're supposed to feel that way. But that's still why my rating is what my rating is. But in the end, it's just, I'll say I was a 4.5 in the beginning. And I'm a 5 star at the end. How about I
Yep.
say that?
Agreed.
one thing from a superhero person perspective, if you're going into this thinking that and you're going into this for that, Stacy does remind us in the end that we're not sure if he really is a superhero at this point. So you might feel a little slighted there. I don't, but you might, if that's why you're going into it. But as somebody who's read the comics and we've heard what Perry said, he liked it. He was riveted. So I'm also with Marcy in that this is great for people who into MCU, maybe not so much as they were when the first Iron Man came out and want to get back into it. This is the get back into it point. This is also the point for people who are not necessarily MCU fans at all, or maybe even comic book fans or superhero fans, or I don't know anything about all this sci-fi mess. This is a great show. This is just a great show. It's fun. It has layers. It'll keep you riveted. And just about every character that we meet has a level. They are not just a caricature, you know.
Yeah.
They are not just a stereotype. They have at least a little bit of a level, if not their whole character. So, one other thing I did ask Perry, and I'm going to end on this. I did ask him, is Wonder Man going to be in Doomsday? And he said, I haven't seen anything about him being in Doomsday. That's Avengers Doomsday, which is supposed to be out at the end of this year, the big Avengers MCU movie at the end of the year. As far as I know, Marvel hasn't officially confirmed nor denied that he'll be in the movie. A lot of supposed leakers claim that he will be, but those people are mostly grifters, and anything they say should be taken with a silo full of salt. He did say salt. Y'all know I have to beep him out sometimes. But anyway, so unless Marvel issues an official confirmation, I'll believe it when I'm sitting in theater. So, even though he does have an Avengers link in the comic books, doesn't look like he's going to be in Doomsday at this point. Who knows? But I'm just happy he's here. Look at this show, y'all.
I did.
I'm so happy that y'all came on. I'm so happy that you reminded me of this and that that I needed to put this back on my podcast episode list. And I'm happy that y'all are here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hi. Want to get show notes from this and future episodes in your inbox? Then subscribe to Nerdy Romantics newsletter at nerdyromanticspodcast.com/subscribe. Nerdy Romantics newsletter not only has show notes, but nerdy and romantic recs and sneak peeks and exclusives of my spicy, nerdy romances and love stories. I love talking sci-fi, superheroes, fantasy, and romance books, movies, and shows with my friends. So share this podcast with your nerdy romantic friends. Thanks for listening and for watching.